Hey, welcome along, everybody. Welcome back to our second session in Capable Councillors, our sort of leadership capability workshop. Thanks to everybody who's popped into the Zoom session tonight as well, and for those who got through last week's session. And I know a few people have viewed that online as well today, the recording from that. We will record again this session today, and I'll be able to put that on our Facebook page probably tomorrow now, so that people can review the recording of that to follow up on what's been said and done and things that may or may not be of interest to you. So welcome back. That's the main thing. Tonight, we're catching up on some homework, which I set for a few people. So I've got a few familiar faces there, which might have had a quick look at that. We're also talking about personality profiling tools, and you get to have maybe a scary insight into myself, but we'll try and paint a picture about what other people might look like. And for me, personality profiling kind of tools are very interesting because you learn a little about yourself, and you can take it or leave it. But we do learn that lots of other people are different to us and operate in very different ways, even though they work for the same company, we're on the same team, etc. And that's, I think, the value in that one. We're also going to have a quick look into some emotional intelligence material, talk about that. We're going to write a few notes down on what our own individual strengths and capabilities and maybe opportunities would be as an activity tonight as well. And we're going to drive that out of the personality and the emotional intelligence material. And then we see, certainly on the top corner of my screen, we've got Michelle Price-Jones. She's our guest speaker tonight, and she's going to talk about everything about her leadership journey. And I guess ultimately ending up as a first-term councillor in the Blaney Shire, which is, from stories I've heard, is quite an interesting pursuit. And we've also got, I'm going to mention you, Melanie, if that's okay too. Melanie's along tonight. She's a first-term councillor with Orange. Is that true? That's right. And you're also doing some women in council stuff. And she's going to pop a link into the chat for us all to check out if you're interested in some of the courses that she's running across the state over the next couple of months or so to help facilitate that journey into potential council. And certainly for me, it's council and other leadership roles, which you might all be involved in. So there we go. That's us. We're at the 28th. This is where we're up to tonight. This is what we're talking about. Next week, we're talking heavily about values, decision-making, and a concept called fixed and growth mindset by a lady by the name of Carol Dweck. And another friend of mine, Ursula Stroh, who's most memorable to me. We've worked together over quite a few years, but she's been in the round the world yacht race. And I find that totally fascinating that she could be out in the middle of the sea in the middle of the night for weeks on end, bobbing in the waves. And it gives you a really unique perspective on life, I think, and certainly her stuff is around leadership and women in leadership as well. So we'll get a lot out of that chat next week. So let's dive into tonight's stuff. Oh, there we are. There's some more details. Everyone's got a link there on the guest speaker page. So that's what's coming up in that way. Ursula, Jess, Paz, and then Rich to wrap us up in our last week. So links there. I've already put the PDF of this deck up on the Facebook page. So you're welcome to grab that. You can click through on those links, then check out these people. Check out the videos. We're watching another video tonight about emotional intelligence and some of the other resources which exist in that deck for you as well. So there you go. So last week I asked you about a few things, gave a few little activities to do. And the first one was about being more curious and less judgmental. And I was going to ask you, has anybody had any luck with being more curious over the last 7 days, exercising that curiosity muscle? And has anybody noticed any kind of new views of the world, I guess, out of being more curious in their interactions with other people, circumstances, and different things that might be going on in the world?
Andrew, I found it very interesting after doing the EQ test, then talking to people and being able to understand those, particularly with higher EQ, it was just like, I can see why you're so good at communicating with me because of the understanding the domains a bit better.
There you go. That's a nice outcome of that one as well. And I think it certainly makes a difference. Just those things, which we'll get to very shortly as well, open your mind up, get you to think about things a little differently, and maybe just give you that moment. And they talk about in decision making, if you wait just 3 seconds to respond to a question, the likelihood of your answer being higher quality, more thoughtful is massively high just after a 3-second pause. So even by saying, instead of just judging what's happening right here in front of me now, pausing and being curious for a 3-second break can really change the way you might perceive what happens next. And that's a bonus thing. And that's really what I want to get out of that one for you guys. as we move forward over coming weeks, I expect to hear a few more stories about how curiosity is serving you, and maybe taking you away from conflict, maybe opening up better opportunities for you by that one too. The second one I want to ask you all about too is, what leadership sources have you found in your social streams or any other places that you might have subscribed to over the last week? Has anyone there jumped on something, even one of the ones we suggested, Adam Grant, Leadership First on LinkedIn, Mojo Espresso on Instagram as well? Anyone pick up any others?
Yeah, I did follow some people on Instagram. I should have taken a screenshot of what they were called, but but yeah, I
Okay.
have been doing some more looking for leadership, and I did look at one. Where was it? No, I can't find it now. Oh, here, this one. Yeah, that was quite brave feminine leadership. So that was
Okay.
quite good on Instagram. I think
There you
it's
go.
American, but yeah, she had some good little things that I was listening to. So yeah.
Perfect. You only need to pick up one thing every day, one thing every week or so, and you're going to move the needle on where you're going in life on that front. So I think that's very valuable. So thanks for that, Linda, as well. It's really good. Now, the things we're going to dive into now, and the links are there if you haven't happened to have done them yet, is the personality tool, which is 16 personalities, and the emotional intelligence one. These are both, usable tools for what we need to do here, and they're free, which is why they do exist in this deck and why you can just jump online and do them. There is more than likely better and more comprehensive tools, but they both cost money and they'll take you a substantial amount more time to do that. So you can take these with a grain of salt when we get to discuss them a little bit, and know that there's other tools that are out there, but this will just give you a bit of a snapshot of where you might like to be. When we discuss this tonight, I've put my scores and things out there. You're all welcome to comment on those, give me some feedback on those as you like. If you'd like to share your own scores, you're welcome to do that, but do not feel under any pressure to tell how you went in either of those tests, just so everyone's pretty cool with that to make that one happen. There you go. The slide that I think is the pivotal one from the deck last week, which I just love and I keep going back to, and we've got some highlighted words in there, which just helps us focus on kind of where we can go with this, where this can take us, is about the ability to inspire other people, to take people on a journey with us, to focus on some goals that are meaningful and useful, and for the capable council, things will help change communities, which will help maybe influence the way councils interact with communities particularly. But for the rest of us, how we work with our teams, how we work with our peers, how we work with our families sometimes. So I think leadership is about all of those things, and it's definitely not position related, and all of us should be kind of tuning up our leadership capabilities in everyday life, in the things that we do, and the world, and certainly our communities will be a better place for the more people who step up. And I guess to Jess's thing for coming weeks is being the upstander, and places where you might, just be, again, tempted to sit on your hands, you actually jump up and do a few things and wave the flag from time to time. Sometimes that's fraught with difficulties, but it's a good, fun thing to do when you're doing it. So I do quite a lot with personality profiles, particularly around a tool called Reach. And for me, Reach is the graphic that's in the top right-hand corner of the screen. You can see there. Two other very famous or well-used profiling tools are the DISC profiling mechanism and the Myers-Briggs test. Myers-Briggs particularly use a Carl Jung style platform, which most of these kind of tools are based off, I suppose, at the end of the day. And what they're aiming to do is to, and it sounds a little bit problematic probably, is not really pigeonhole people, but understand where we sit on a range of issues and use that to frame up, I guess, literally where we do sit on those issues and compare that to other people. The Reach tool up the top there, just to get a bit of a grounding on the way it works particularly, which I do a lot with, it has the two dimensions of people being either very people focused and people expressive, it talks about. And for people who are up that top end of the grid there, people will probably come first in all of their decision making. When we get down the bottom of the grid, the other end of that axis, we've got people who are extremely task focused. And you all know people focused people, and you all know task focused people. And there's a continuum where they slide in between them. And people who are very task focused, the task comes first. The task will kind of dominate the way they look at the world and do things. When we go to the left to right axes there, we've got people who are thinking orientated or more methodological on the left side. and more action orientated. And in the 16 personalities ones, there's a couple of questions which you'll relate to being more action orientated or more thoughtful about different things as well, more people centric. And they don't specifically talk about tasks in that one, but there's other questions that lead you into that space as well. In the reach grid there, we have drivers, coaches, counsellors, and advisors, and we have profiles on all of them. We have a lot of detail about all of them, and that profiling can help us understand how people in different quadrants might like to work, how people in different quadrants might like to communicate with each other, how compatible they are with brainstorming, for example, how big picture or how detail orientated they are. And it really helps us when we do this inside an organization, understand the moving parts of an organization and the people and why they're working very well together or possibly not. One of the things that happens out of these grids is that we see where people, and we can map lots of people on these kind of grids at these more kind of corporate level things. And we can see trends towards the way organizations may have hired people, and people tend to hire a little bit in terms of like-minded people. So sometimes in organizations, we see a real cluster of particular typologies. And the downside for that, and this is where we talked about diversity last week, is that when you end up with a cluster of people that all think and work and behave the same, it really, to a certain extent, can limit the way information flows in terms of communication. It can impact the way we view the world. It can impact the way we do things in particular organizations. So it impacts the culture, I suppose, at the end of the day. So it's sort of interesting, and these grids are useful from that perspective of understanding what's going on. When we do the work and the grids that we're about to look at here, we're looking to pull out some strengths, and both of the tools, the emotion intelligence one and the 16 personalities one, gives us a list of things which we might be actually quite good at. So we're going to move into that one in a second. Feel free, as last week, shout out if you've got any questions about anything along the way, type it in the chat box, or yell out and ask a question, pop your hand up if you'd like to do it that way as well to make that one happen. So I did my personality this morning, which is probably good. If I did it last week, it might have changed a little bit. I'm feeling a little schizo at the moment. But the profile popped up for me as an ENFP-A. So what that means in terms of me, and 16 personalities comes up with a grid with 16 boxes in it. So it's 4 one way, 4 across the top, and turns out to be 16 possibilities in terms of how you fit, and hence why it's called 16 personalities. So the letters stand for the things that are more dominating the way that you might operate or feel or think about different things. So for me, that's a little bit more extroverted than introverted. It's a bit more intuitive than observant. It's a bit more feeling than thinking. It's a bit more prospecting than judging. And it's a bit more assertive than turbulent or chaotic in approach to different things, which is kind of good. I'm sort of happy with that. On the previous reach grid that you saw there, I'm also a coach up in that former. So I'm very people orientated and very action orientated. So this kind of reflects some of the aspects of that as well. So there's some similarities between them as well. It gets to call me a campaigner. So that maybe that makes me the support team for someone else running for council this year rather than the actual person itself, just in case I might look a lot like some of those people. So campaigner, we're out there, we're enthusiastic, creative, sociable, free spirits. Sure about that. I'm a bit more conservative. I think in a workplace, I am far more social than I am maybe in my private life a little bit, and can always find reasons to smile. And I do like to I'm not a very good joker, but I do like to make light of situations sometimes. And that hopefully lifts the mood and elevates the mood of other people as well. So each of you have done the test will have ended up with a graphic that looks a lot like this, and you'll end up with a set of 4 letters with a dash A or T on the end of that. And we'll talk about that after we sort of finish talking about the different parts of that as well. So these are my scores. We've hopped in here, and you will be sitting somewhere on that line as well. The introverted extroverted thing is kind of funny. I don't think it's funny, but I think it's a really problematic way to describe people. You're either introverted or you're extroverted. It pigeonholes people in a less than positive kind of way, I think. What we find is some people are less likely or keen on communication. And when we go back to that reach grid where we have a group called advisors, particularly, they are more likely to fall into the introverted categories. And sometimes they get overlooked at meetings and occasions where people are sharing information, but actually they are the best informed people in the room. They are the people that know stuff that other people do not know. So it's really important across wherever you sit on this particular scale that you reach out to the other side of the scale to know what's going on. Sometimes you might have to shut down the extroverted people because they're making too much noise, they're being a bit rowdy, and certainly that can happen in my world a little bit. So we need mechanisms to kind of deal with the different personalities that exist in the room. But if we're all at one end of the scale or all at the other end of the scale, it'd be equally chaotic both ways as well. The intuitive observant thing is interesting. So intuitive is all about gut feel, sense, and we find, and I'd be interested to maybe put your hand up if you did score a high score on the intuitive side. Anyone who did this, maybe show me that one or type something in the chat box if you can see that. Again, in some of the other work we've done in the intuitive observant thing, observant is often a little bit more analytical in nature and intuitive is more gut instinct. So that's me. It does work with me. I'm pretty good with that too. But largely, most of us will work for what we call evidence-based organizations. Evidence-based organizations are all about being observant and analytical in the way they make decisions. Yet most of the people who work in that space, well, there you go, 70s are the number to have for this one. Thank you. Most of the people who work in that space are still highly intuitive, gut instinct driven people. So we have even a bit of tension, I'd say, in that space about how organizations would like us to make decisions possibly, and how we actually would want to make decisions if it was in our own free life. So again, interesting ways, no right or wrong place to be, but once we know where we sit, we can maybe develop some strengths out of that, which is where we're getting to shortly. On the thinking feeling scale, so again, thinking more rational, and organizations want us to be rational, logical decision makers. And yet here am I up here on the 67% scale of being far more emotionally driven in the way I behave and do those things. In fact, I value that emotion and I expect to see it in other people. And I'm probably disappointed when I don't see that as much, I guess, at the end of the day. Couple of things about it though too. Empathy is big. We'll see that come out in emotional intelligence also. Social harmony. So that would say that I'm a little less likely to want conflict around me. And in fact, conflict might find disorientating. I don't necessarily think that, but I know other people who are in this space definitely don't like to see conflict. And yet conflict sometimes, and for some groups of people, we're not talking biffo in the hallways here, like an NRL match or something like that. We're talking about, heated debate about ideas and stuff. That style of heated debate can bring out new ideas and new ways to do things. So when we put a lid on that kind of debate and we don't have a mechanism of any sort to bleed off that energy or those ideas, we might be missing important things as well for our business or organization, or where we need to be as possibly a councillor, as it might be. Prospecting versus judging. So prospecting individuals are very good at improvising and adapting to opportunities. So I'm going to stamp that and say I'm a little bit entrepreneurial, which is possibly true. We've had a few things going on in our world like that, and maybe on a daily basis we're always looking for new things as well. But it also makes me maybe overly flexible to some things when other people would like to see you play by the rules a little bit more. Again, doesn't matter where you sit on this scale and what numbers you kind of get. Once you know, you can work with that and you can leverage that strength that you found in that particular space as well. So flexible non-conformist, I'm not quite sure what that one is. And the value of novelty above stability. I definitely like that one. So definitely bring that one on for me. Assertive versus turbulent or more chaotic in space. This is the last letter on the end of your 4 letters there as well. So assertive individuals, rest assured, even-tempered, resistant to stress. I must have only just got into the group on that one as well. They refuse to worry too much and tend to be self-confident when striving for goals. And certainly in my work-based life, I get to be really quite like that. And there is a logic that when you do these surveys, whatever you're thinking about, if you're at home, thinking about home, that'll influence the way you answer questions. If you're in a hardcore workplace, it's going to influence the way you think about things as well. And I certainly would be in a work mind when I've answered this one to see what's going on. So they're the 5 different aspects of me personally, and we've seen some people are popping some numbers into the chat box there about where we can see from that. So that's kind of cool as well. And we've got some good. So Melanie there at 51% on the turbulent one. That's a kind of middle of the road. She can move between those 2 places, and probably that flexibility allows her to maybe cope better with different people at different times. And so that might be also why she's being really good at facilitating courses as well. I see you're 57, 86%, was it, Sarah? So Sarah's pushing up the scale big time there, and tentative towards it. I'm thinking that's assertive. For you, was it? 67% assertive.
Yeah, but I'm nothing. I'm nothing to Rolly.
There you go. Where's Rolly? I didn't see it. 98. Oh, there you go. Yeah, and I can possibly imagine that as well. That would be very true. So fascinating, very interesting stuff. Since we're talking about that there, let's go around the room a little bit. Who else has got some impressions about how they fell out of this with their letters and the categories that it sort of put them in?
I'll just jump in quickly.
Yeah.
I actually did something similar to this probably about 10 years ago. And what I find interesting is that having done it then, I don't remember what my last letter was, but I do remember that I was an IN. I do remember being INF.
Yep.
I don't know that I was a P. I think I was a J, but I think I got INFJ in my head.
Yep.
But I find it interesting that even though I believe I've done a lot of personal development and gained a lot of skills and had a lot of growth in that 10 years. But it's interesting that it's basically still, the letters are still essentially the same. So it's just interesting.
It's interesting. And maybe you're a bit disappointed. You're going, I've done all this personal investment and I haven't moved very far. But actually, and they say, certainly for the people who do the Reach one for us in the Australian database, there's about 55,000 people in it. And after the age of about 25, particularly for males, you don't get a lot of movement after that time. But what you will have got out of that is you understand more about the parameters that you're in and your flexibility and capability to deal with different places on those parameters and different people that you meet. Just becomes a natural thing to you because you're aware of it. For people who had never come across, personality profiling tools, if you met one in the street tomorrow, they would have no idea really how to take you. And if they had, no idea about emotional intelligence and were quite low on that front, you would have a very big gap communication-wise, at least through you. And then if you were planning a project together, you'd be kind of way apart. And you'd have to take them on a bit of a journey to work out how you could get the best out of this particular project as well. I was going to ask you, Trudy, because I see you sitting there, and I'll come back to you, Michelle.
Right.
Did you do the survey? What did you come up with in your categories?
Yeah, I did. It was interesting because I've done Myers-Briggs before when I was sort of in a corporate life before kids and all the rest of that messiness. And I was always an ISTJ. So it was interesting that I switched. Well, still so I was an INFJ, so higher on the feeling this time than the thinking, which was a bit of a shift. And I maybe put that down to a bit more age, and then the nature of my work now is a lot.
Okay.
I have to tap into a lot more empathy than what I did in corporate management.
Yeah.
But judging was my highest. That was at 72%. Yeah. So I'm probably that planner, organised judging thing. But it's always interesting. I love doing these things.
Yeah, well, I'm sure that, because I know you work for CSU now, that CSU would like that aspect of you because they do like planners. They like stuff that's going to happen. They like to organize things. And as much as, a university's place of free thinkers, they don't like that much. So they would have lots of people who are like that. They need to make the wheels turn around and go. Michelle, how'd you go? Do you want to add something to that?
Oh, I just wanted to add something more broadly actually around Mel about that whole, doing loads and loads of PD and personal development and just finding a way. And I think it is interesting because I think your base personality doesn't change. So a lot of that for me, PD, has been finding a way to leverage off some of my, the highs and then manage the lows of my personality profile. And I think that's been probably more recently has been my biggest journey, especially on council, I have to say, is managing some of those aspects of my personality that doesn't quite fit with bureaucracy very well. So I think probably one of the best part of the journey is finding if you know this, you can work out where the balcony view and the basement view is of those things, and then adjust them to hopefully work better for you. So
perfect. Good story as well. I think that's true. You learn, you get smarter about it as well. Anybody else want to comment on where they ended up to on that particular set of scales?
I wasn't surprised at all because I've done this one before, and I'm pretty solidly INTJ. I sort of see them as just the yin and yang of a spectrum. So I haven't sort of ever tried to change it, but I've really looked at these in terms of, well, if I understand myself, I'm going to understand other people better. And that's a useful place to be. And I'm also quite curious about the fact that the first three I'm almost in the middle, and then the last two wildly on the left.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? So all different types, and you could question it as much as it does, but if you know you're there, then you can strategize around that. And if you don't, you really could be all sorts of places, and you'd be struggling to develop strong relationships with other people. Welcome, James. Did you want to make a comment about that?
Yeah,
you're right.
Thank you. I just got the video working then. I didn't realize I wasn't on, sorry. So I actually haven't done too many personality tests before, but I just logged on off to the side on the 16 personalities. And so I'm a ISTJ, and yeah, definitely agree with everything that I'm just reading about that category. Just looking at the ISTJ weaknesses, it's like really insightful in terms of thinking about how I may have interacted with people in the past when I've thought that I'm right, they're wrong, and how that kind of black and white dichotomy has been a real limitation for kind of making progress with various things. So it's already like a really helpful tool to do.
Excellent. That's a good story. I think that's true. As much as our businesses do want usually that black and white dichotomy, that dyadic nature of yes or no, but in reality, there's just so many other different things going on. And in decision making, we want a range of options to go forward rather than just a simple this way or that way, because it can be very difficult to pin it down to those kind of things as well. So excellent work there. Thank you very much for everyone's input on that. I'm just going to mention one thing off the bottom of this slide, which was more of a laugh to me and has impacted me even doing this project a bit. Was however, once the initial bloom of inspiration wears off, ENFPs can struggle with self-discipline consistency, losing steam on projects that once meant so much to them. There you go. And that's my weekly cycle nearly, I think, on that one. I do come and go. So something's good. So I have to practice being resilient on that front. Now, this is my summary strengths and weaknesses, which all of you will have seen on the last page of that that website. When you go through that, they've probably sent you an email link, or you've got an email link to you, so you can go back to that detail as well. So for me, and I've got a page later on which you can add stuff to record, so we can build up that kind of strength portfolio. Curious, enthusiastic, perceptive, excellent communicators. Well, I guess having become a facilitator, midway through life, that has actually helped me a lot. And working in the marketing space has also helped me a lot. Like a lot. It's crazy. So I'm really happy that actually popped up. And so certainly for me, that is one of the things that I would want to be using going forward. And we'll see a bit of a potential clash with that in some of my emotional intelligence areas when we talk about that as well. Easy going, good natured, and positive. Great things. Tick the box there. Pretty happy with that, actually. The weaknesses, though, people pleasing. People pleasing is a really fascinating thing, and I clearly like that, and I'm accustomed to that. And even in some of the other profiling tools around the councillor style thing in the Reach tool, people pleasers are often overloaded with other people's stuff. And in fact, they do so much or want to take on board so many other people's stuff that they get really unproductive in their own space. And so people pleasers often have to learn how to say, no, I'm busy, I'm doing other things, etc. on the way through. So it's an interesting thing. Unfocused, disorganized, procrastinator, but I did read some stuff about procrastination, how it actually helps you make better decisions. So I'm really going to go with that. And the appearance that I might be unfocused and disorganized is purely a perception for those who don't know me that well. Overly accommodating, overly optimistic, and restless. I think that could be true. The restless thing is, and that's good. And because there's probably no one from this group today, but I did send an email to some people who do some work managing me today. We designed some courses for them a couple of weeks ago, and we executed them a couple of weeks ago. And I'm really keen to be collaborative and consult and get feedback and those sort of things. And I sent them a cheeky little email today saying, oh, it'd be great to get together before the next sessions, which are next week, and just go through it and get some feedback and do that sort of stuff. I know I've sent the email knowing they will not respond, to that, and they don't want to do that because it's not part of their persona to behave that way. But I'm restless. I'm looking for that feedback. I'm wanting to make things happen. I'm, in fact, dangerously bad in terms of doing things like that sometimes, which is bad for me. Cool. That was personality profiling. Now you know that. You've got some stuff to work with in that space. We've got those strengths which you can take forward to the activity coming up in a little while. Emotional intelligence is one of my favorite things. And again, for me, it was a bit of a light bulb moment the first time I heard about emotional intelligence, probably back before 2000. It was really only started to be written about in academic circles in the early 90s or so. And some of the people who did that are still writing and consulting about them. You'll find them on LinkedIn with quite a bit of stuff there. So emotional intelligence has been big for me, and I'll tell you why some of the stuff about that in a second. So you might use emotional intelligence, particularly when we're dealing with change. If you don't think you're dealing with change, you're again probably misguided. We've got change going on all around us. We need to be adaptable. And when we talked about that agility last week, that movement thing, then that's about dealing with change. It's how we cope with that rather than getting just bang knocked over by the change that's coming our way. Meeting deadlines, giving and receiving feedback. We're going to talk about feedback a little bit later. Feedback is a tough gig at the end of the day. So you have to be able to roll with both giving feedback, which is tough to give, but it's also very difficult to receive feedback. And if you're going to give it, you should be really open to receiving it as well. Dealing with challenging relationships, stressful situations, dealing with setbacks and failure, because we don't like failure. Our society doesn't really reward failure that well, yet it's the probably prime learning experiences that you have. When things go bad, you learn exponentially more than when things are going well. And then the last two, which I had to add on that, was running for election or dealing with councils. So we'll hear a bit more about that with Michelle and see how her emotional intelligence is going when we get to that point as well. Some of the research on emotional intelligence says that it will give you a really, really, really positive impact in the workplace. You might be as intelligent as you could be, which is about IQ, and they use EQ to describe emotional intelligence so that it's kind of comparable in some way to IQ. Not everyone has high IQ. If companies could hire people with high IQ all the time, they would probably try to do that, but they're just harder to get for many, many, many gigs. You also might have a really strong technical background. You're the most awesome research scientist, technician, biotech, whoever it might be, person. You have great, strong technical skills that will also take you quite far in an organization as well. And usually those tech skills can take you well out of your depth, because when you get taken out of doing those jobs, you have to manage people who are doing those jobs. It's a very different ballgame to actually doing it yourself. So EQ, they would say, because of the way you can learn to deal with people and manage people and lead people, will give you greater performance than IQ or a really strong skill set. And if you happen to have all three, lucky for you, because you're going to go really well, go places on that front as well. So powerful. The EQ thing, when you know about that, and particularly about your own emotional levels, your physical health will probably benefit from that. Your mental health will definitely be benefiting from that. And we're going to talk about how people maintain their emotional states, and that definitely helps your mental health as well. And then when we've got a handle on how we feel about both those things, that we can have more positive, proactive, useful relationships in our home life, family life, work life, on our soccer team, wherever we might be, because we can manage that better. We understand what's going on with that. We understand what's going on with other people, and we can make that work out better for us as well. So Google it if you want to. There's a heap of great sources out there. Audio books, heaps of stuff on YouTube. Have a bit of a look at that. We're just going to duck out and watch a Harvard Business Review video on that. I'll just flick out to that screen, which should be here somewhere. Maybe the last one. There you go. And it doesn't go full screen, this one, so you'll just have to go with the pictures we've got, and it takes about 3 minutes. So just give me a thumbs up if you can hear it too, please.
What distinguishes great leaders from average ones? A factor that psychologists call emotional intelligence, also known as EQ. When Daniel Goleman analyzed executives at nearly 200 companies, he found emotional intelligence was twice as important as both IQ and technical ability in driving performance. At the most senior levels, it accounted for a whopping 90% of the difference between the best and the rest. But what exactly is emotional intelligence? According to Goleman, it's made up of 5 components: self-awareness, self-regulation, motivation, empathy, and social skill. Let's examine each in turn. Self-awareness is understanding one's own emotions and their effect on others. Self-aware leaders are confident and candid. They can realistically assess and talk about their strengths and weaknesses, often with a self-deprecating sense of humor. Self-regulation is the ability to control or redirect disruptive impulses, essentially to think before acting. Effective self-regulators tend to be trustworthy, comfortable with ambiguity, able to suspend judgment, and open to change. Motivation is a passion to work with energy and persistence for reasons beyond money or status. It means being driven, goal-oriented, optimistic, and committed to the organization. Empathy is the ability to understand the emotional needs of others and to treat them accordingly. Empathetic leaders are good at developing and retaining talent, serving clients and customers, and managing cross-cultural sensitivities. Social skill is proficiency in managing relationships, developing networks, building rapport, and finding common ground. It makes leaders more persuasive and helps them create change. According to research, we can all increase our level of emotional intelligence with training that activates the brain's limbic system, which governs our feelings and impulses. This works best in 3 steps: incentive, extended practice, and feedback. And because all the EQ components are interconnected, you'll find that improving in one area can help you do better in the others too. Consider an executive whose colleagues say she is low on empathy because she doesn't listen well. She checks her phone in meetings, sometimes interrupts people, and often glosses over or disregards differing points of view. When her boss points this out, the executive is surprised. In her view, she was just being efficient and direct. But the feedback incentivizes her to improve. Privately, she replays certain incidents and thinks about how she could have acted differently. She also watches leaders who are good listeners and tries to mimic their behavior. With continued guidance from her boss, she gradually becomes more empathetic, boosting both the team's morale and its productivity. There's no question that leaders still need raw intelligence and good technical ability, but that's a baseline. Great leaders must also have or develop the 5 components of high emotional intelligence: self-awareness, self-regulation, motivation, empathy, and social skill.
There you go. Let's quick look at that one. What was that? Excellent. So there's a bunch of stuff going on in there, which, you know, those guys have got the good research going on things, and it really helps us think about what's going on in that space about our emotional intelligence and how we could possibly use it to, you know, it's helpful. We could get ahead. We can work with other people better if we've got higher, or we understand our emotional intelligence as well. So I did the test also this afternoon or this morning probably as well. And I turned up to be the intuitive, which is got to do with the scores, particularly around dealing with other people, how to, in fact, read nonverbal cues intuitively, read the room to determine how other people feel, which has worked out pretty well for me as well. And again, as a facilitator of, you know, quite a few courses, thousands of people and different things, has been really helpful to me. And I guess if I wasn't able to do that, I probably would have really struggled in this gig and not done nearly as much good work as I possibly could have as well. So it's an interesting outcome for me. It's also quite revealing as well. So these guys in this particular test that Truity do have 5 categories. I think the wellbeing one, I'm not as familiar with that, but they just calculate that out of, I think, an average of the other ones as well. So I'm just going to talk about the other 4 particularly. So self-awareness, I scored 72. That's not too bad. You guys can pop your scores if you want to share them, but if you don't want to share them, don't worry about that. There you go. So James and Linda rocks. Excellent. Good to see that one. Optimist as well. Fantastic. Self-awareness 72. That's pretty good. Certainly as a, I don't know, somewhere between an 18 and a probably 40-year-old male, that would have been like 10 for me, I reckon. It would have been really, really low. It was really something that I didn't reflect on or know much about as well. certainly over, again, a career, and probably since I've been facilitating in particular, I would have grown that other awareness. So that's awareness of others score. And 83, that's pretty good. That's why it's given me that thing about being able to read other people in the room, and a skill which now I'm transferring into the video virtual space, because that's the way that a lot of my work happens these days as well. So that's pretty interesting as well. And I think that's a good thing. So that helps me. And when I go to a face-to-face meeting, particularly, always sit in a place where I can read the whole room. I don't want to sit in a corner. I don't want to sit get boxed in by other people or anything like that. I always pick a place that I can kind of maximize my grasp of what else is happening in and around me. So that's part of the way I kind of play that one out as well. Emotional control. This is where I've got a serious weakness, and I've known about it for a long time. It's got me fired at least twice in my life, and that was probably disappointing at the time. And in hindsight, you reflect on that and go, gosh, how did that happen? Well, actually, Andrew, there's a few things you should know about yourself on this front. And so for me, emotional control is difficult. And so I've got a bunch of hacks, which I'm going to talk about. And I know that it's like that. It's still ish like that. It's not as bad as it used to be. And that score would be higher than it was, go probably 20 years ago. It would have been much, much lower than that. And that really, again, it cost me jobs, which cost me income, which cost me money, which affected my family, which cost all sorts of things at those particular points in time, which is interesting. Pretty good on empathy, I think, at 64. That's not too bad, but it's probably something I should be working on. And more than likely, I find myself in different situations where I might get a little low on empathy for some stuff. And you will see, and one of the outcomes of this testing as well is that I might get frustrated by where I perceive there may be, I should be more empathetic, but I'm actually going to write a rule about that and say, well, come on, it's time for you to lift your game or get on with things as well. So I need to be really careful about how I make those things happen as well. And the wellbeing one, as I said, I'm not sure how that's calculated in this particular test, but it's a number and it's there. Highlight for me, definitely awareness of others. Low light for me, emotional control, which is bad. Who else is, so we had some other numbers there. Michelle, you were 62, 72, 36. Oh gosh.
Surprisingly similar, really.
There you go. That's a bit scary. And
We
Nicole's
might be
rocking it
related.
though. Haven't heard from you yet, Nicole. Welcome along. Big scores on self-awareness there. Well done for you on that one as well. Again, emotional control, more challenging possibly, and the wellbeing thing very high as well. Excellent. What a great set of scores there also. And some other good things. So interesting. And so, Rolly, yeah, you're really high on self-control or emotional control as well, but low on empathy, which is funny. And I can just mention that Rolly's a doctor. And so that's a interesting thing that would come out of your life. And I wonder, do you want to make a comment on how you see that score with your daily kind of gigs?
Yeah, I think the low empathy is sort of a developed sense to reduce empathy. I really was aware in the questions when they're asking me, I'm like, I know what I'm, maybe would instinctively feel, but I toned it back a bit. So, yeah, that's interesting. Maybe
it is interesting as well. And I've done a bit of work lately with people who have been either vets or vet assistants in veterinary hospitals where people have got pets and dogs and they're injured and stuff. And this, I'm not sort of saying this is parallel to Rolly's world, but they all say they struggle with, and they call them ethical decisions. So the vet's recommending a course of action, or the vet nurse is recommending a course of action, and then the owner of the pet doesn't agree. And there's a big gap between what's going to happen next for the pet and what should happen with the pet. And that's extremely stressful for them, apparently. So that, I would say, might be somewhat of, Rolly's managed coping mechanism, because in his work, there would be a lot of challenges in that front as well. So really interesting scores there. And nothing, other ones in there too. Good. Nicole, I haven't heard from you yet. Did you want to comment on yours?
Hi, I'm in my PJs, so I'll keep my screen off.
That's okay. That's the joys of Zoom sessions, isn't it?
It is. Yeah, the self-awareness was interesting, and I understand the emotional control. I'm quick to react, but also very good at managing it in the right situations. So yeah, working from home helps you react and respond, but recover quickly as well. And well-being, I think, is so high because I'm burnt out completely a while ago. So I've changed a lot of things to make sure that I'm prioritizing myself and putting myself first. So yeah, I'm not surprised, but it is quite high.
Excellent. Well, well done to you on that front as well. And it's good in the home space. If you get to work in that space, it's good. You can probably run out in the backyard and scream at the clothesline, or run around the block, or chase a dog, or do something like that to make that happen. And we all have to have control mechanisms for that. So we will talk about that in a second as well. So this is my next slide, and the core emotional intelligence stuff happens around those kind of 4 aspects there. And I just want everyone, I'm not going to ask you particularly about that, but think about how you're feeling right at the moment. It's late on a Tuesday night. There's probably, Nicole's probably ready for bed. She's got pajamas on already. Some people are excited. Some people are sad. Some people have been at the hospital. Some people haven't been at the hospital. We've got different things going on, and how we're kind of coping with that. And so wherever you're at on that front. So for me, self-regulation's low. I'm excited at the moment. I get excited doing this kind of stuff. Using a stand-up desk so I can move around more to help control my energies a little bit as well. And drinking lots of water. And that's one of my coping mechanisms, is anytime you see me take a breath or a break and step back a little bit, that's me thinking about what's going to happen next, rather than just letting the first thing that comes out to my mind come out of my mouth as well. So I'm doing that. Who needs a bit of a pick-me-up at the moment? Who's tired on a Tuesday night? What are you guys doing to manage your emotions right this second? Sitting in front of the fire, that works as well. Relaxing. Everyone's looking reasonably calm, so that's a really good thing, and I think that's good. So, it's the end of the day. If we did this first thing in the morning, we'd probably be feeling different about things. If we just had a difficult conversation at work, we'd be feeling different, and we'd be looking for ways to manage that as well. Social awareness is how's everyone feeling around you, and you can look even on the video screen, and probably all of us will perceive that everyone does look quite calm. No one's particularly sitting back from the camera. Everyone's sort of being observant and looking at those things. So again, we're using that to make some assessments about how people are feeling. If everyone's heads were on the desk and their eyes were closed, I'd know this wasn't going that well, and I'd have to make some adjustments about that, and maybe lighten my voice up a bit, or speak a little bit louder, or something like that as well. Once we know those kind of things there, we can put together better relationships, and we can understand those things. So high self-awareness is very good. High social awareness is very good. And then managing yourself to integrate those 2 things together is a very, very powerful way to go and to make that happen. This is an example of a completely low emotional intelligence moment for Will Smith, and probably pretty low for Chris Rock as well. So this is what's called an amygdala hijack. And the amygdala hijack is the kind of reptilian part of your brain going crazy into what we call the fight or flight mode. And it's interesting for Will Smith. This was the Oscars, I think it was 2 years ago now. And he's in the front row of the Oscars, and he's sitting there. He was clearly agitated by stuff that was going on stage, but also I'd say by things that had happened before he got to his seat. And in his decision-making mind at that point, he said, I could either walk out of the Oscars here, which would be the flight thing, front row, stand up, walk out, no anything, except he knows that the TV cameras would follow him. The reporters are capable of catching the door, going, what's going on? And they'd be tough questions to answer. So the logical thing for him to do in this particular moment of really super low emotional intelligence is to go up and biff the guy on the stage. So that's a amygdala hijack, and it happens to all sorts of people. All of you are likely to have witnessed it in your life with different people when things just explode. Your body's pulsing with adrenaline for sure, and a couple of other particular chemicals, which I can't put my name on right this second. And when this happens to people, it takes about 18 minutes or so for this to wash through their body. So if people are going off and losing control, and we can imagine this happening in very many different aspects of our lives, and there's a bit of that around, we have to keep people safe until they can get back into a space where they can start to regain their emotions, as it would be, and get back to a slightly normal space where we can work through the things that have happened. For those who are Brené Brown fans, she has a concept called circle back. Often we would probably we wouldn't let things get as bad as the amygdala hijack first, but when things are getting difficult or hard to move forward on, or a bit conflicts arising and those kind of things, to keep everyone calm and cool, we might go, let's break this meeting here. Let's stop right here. Let's come back in an hour, in a day, in 18 hours for dinner tonight, whenever it might be happening. And we'll all go back and get some air and some space. We'll all go back and do a little bit more research, and we'll come back together to have a more proactive meeting. So again, that's an opportunity for leadership to manage things like that rather than letting things derail into an explosive activity. And if you want to see that video again, you can go to those two links there. One's about the actual Will Smith thing. The other one is about how it occurs and how it happens as well. So stay calm, emotional intelligence can help. So I'm interested to hear from you guys. What sort of things do you do to maintain that self-control? If it was a busy day at the office, if you were frustrated at a council meeting, if you were dealing with difficult people, what kind of hacks do you have to stay in control?
I have anxiety rings. They look like a normal ring. They're not here at the moment because I don't need them.
That's great news. Thank you very much.
They're also called, like, they might be called fidget rings or spinner rings. There's lots of different companies now that make them, but mine actually just look like something you'd buy from a jeweler. You wouldn't really know it was anything different. And I can just discreetly spin that as a way of dealing with, because I deal with a fair bit of misogyny in council chamber. And although there are other women on council, they don't see it. So I'm usually the sole target. So that sort of helps me sort of stay grounded. Things like breathing.
Love it, yeah.
I also, in my head, it's not so much a mantra, but it's something I just go over in my head all the time. Just, excuse the French. Don't let the fuckers get you down. Don't let the fuckers get you down. Don't let the fuckers get you down. And I just have that going through my head the whole time, going. So that's probably how I do it.
Cool. So some excellent mechanisms there. I like the ring thing. And again, as a councillor, and I've only done a couple of council meetings, but I can imagine they are very bizarre spaces, the way people behave and act and the timing and all of those sort of things. So holding your breath in that space would be, very worthwhile. But then, you still want to get some productivity out of things too. So they're really good techniques. Thank you very much for that. That's good points. Who else has got some hacks that they're using to stay calm under pressure?
I walk a lot. I walk every day, and that's probably do quite a long walk every morning. And I think that's really key to my day starting well. And I have pets, and they're a source of great joy for me. And just coming home and being with them, that just takes it dissolves anything else that you happen to bring into the house. So for me, they're my two big ones. But I do meditate and I do try breathing. I'm not great at the breathing thing. Forget remembering to breathe.
Yeah, holding your breath doesn't help a lot when you're under pressure. So that's interesting. But they're good things. So animals are great for us. We like that. And I remember actually when Trudy was at West Bathurst, she had a therapy dog up there. That dog was going to be doing overtime for sure at that school. I know Bathurst High's got one too. They need 20 dogs up at that school to keep them calm up there. So that's a good thing though. And we have that, and they've proven that those kind of tools make. The danger here is that you don't have something to go to when things are getting out of control for you. You don't have that ability to step back, literally take a break. I've got to go to the loo. I definitely am a big drinking of water, taking your breath. So when you drink water, you have to take a breath, you have to drink, you have to swallow, you have to breathe out again. And breathing is really, really good value. And I haven't done it for ages because I haven't been really in a face-to-face class, but when we discuss this in a face-to-face class, we might do a breathing exercise for the class. I think the American military use a 4 in, hold for 4, 4 out, out for 4, and then breathe in again for 4. That's their technique for people shooting weapons accurately to do those kind of things. But we could lower everybody's pulse rate in this virtual room by just doing some breathing exercises. So if you haven't had a look at some of those sort of things, or if you're not into meditation, you should investigate those tools as ways to slow your body down to make that one happen. There's a great story. This is a CSU girl. She organises work placements for allied health workers at CSU down out of Albury, I believe. and highly stressful job dealing with both students and all the different placement opportunities. So she became overwhelmed. She described it as becoming overwhelmed by, you know, a couple of times a day, at least in the morning. And she was a smoker. The only good thing for her about smoking was she had to walk about 200 meters each direction to have a cigarette. So that walking process, that standing upright, that diaphragm unpacked, breathing in more deeply, really assisted her getting back in control of what was going on in her world, so she could sit down, write the next email, take the next phone call, and making those things happen. So if you don't have something, make sure you delve into space to make that one. Get yourself some tools to relax and to chill out, and not to be you know, pinned by other people. Because I think, to Melanie's case, and the some of the male female dynamics that might be happening in council space, there is, you know, there's somewhat purposeful nearly to upset and put other people off guard, and you really don't need to do that. And if you want to work through that, you need to have some mechanisms so that they don't crush you in their first crack at that sort of behavior. Just on the graphic there, there's a bunch of things about emotional intelligence, but I do love the improved decision-making thing. That's the thing at the top there. And if you are stressed, if your pulse is racing, if you're in emergency mode, then you're not going to make very good decisions. It's going to really impact how you think through those things. If you're more relaxed, if your pulse is lower, if you're thinking through the options, if you're giving yourself the space, the circle back space, the 3-second space, you're going to be able to make better decisions. And we like our leaders to be able to make good decisions. And so that grasp of emotional intelligence and mechanisms to stay on top of your personal control are really, really valuable in that space as well. Pretty much the last one. We're nearly heading to Michelle's space right now. I've just got this one to talk about. Has anyone heard of the Johari window or used the Johari window? So the Johari window is quite a fun tool to use with small groups, certainly in your work team, can be good fun. And it's another mechanism of discovery to learn about yourself based on your peers' perceptions, I guess, at the end of the day. So we have this grid here. I'll just tell you a little about the grid in a second. You can Google this. You can find all the resources online to do it. We get a list of words. There's usually about 50 words or so on a sheet, which you can use to describe your co-workers. And there's a range of words, all sorts of different things. So it's quite easy to find some things about them that we do. It best works in small groups of just 2 or 3 people, and then you assess each other on that. It gets quite difficult to find all the right words and to organize the words into the boxes when you've got 4 or 5 people, or anything bigger than that as well. And what it allows us to do is it uncovers probably our hidden strengths, things that we don't know about yet. And if I just move over to the grid, that unknown box down in the bottom left-hand corner there, we kind of populate that with tools like Myers-Briggs, like DISC, like REACH, like the 16 personnel as we did. So that's stuff we normally wouldn't get to know about ourselves, and other people may not know about ourselves. But you've all done one of those, so we've got some strengths in that space already. Up in the open area on the top left-hand side of things, this is the list of words that I choose about myself, and that also my colleagues that are with me choose about myself. So I might say that I'm you know, a good communicator, because we saw that before, and curious. And, you know, my 2 colleagues doing this thing with me, they said, oh yeah, Andrew, you're a good communicator and you're curious. So we'd all put those words into that top box. So good. Everyone knows that. Everyone appreciates me for being curious and a good communicator. That's a good thing. That's a strength that I can definitely leverage in the workplace. 2 other areas, though, is where we did the discovery is, up the top on the right side there, we've got what we call a blind spot. So these would be the things that my 2 other colleagues would write about me, the other words they might use. Though they might say he's reliable and funny, he's trustworthy and transparent. Maybe they're things that I like in terms of values particularly. But I haven't recognized myself for those, but other people see that in me. So given other people see and value that in me, if I can bring that more into the way I work, the way I integrate, the way I work with people, etc., I'm likely to do better, because we know other people like trustworthy, I don't know, humor, whatever the things were that they found. Also on my list of things that I've highlighted about myself might have been funny, humorous, great joke teller, for example, but nobody else has picked up on those words. So they become in the hidden area down the bottom area there. They are things that I know about myself, or I perceive are valuable about myself, but nobody else has picked up on. So what that means is actually other people don't find me very funny or humorous or good at telling jokes, and I should probably stick to those myself. if I do know that there's some other valuable aspects about there about how reliable or trustworthy or empathetic I might be, I should, and nobody else has picked up on those, I kind of need to market those aspects of myself to the group, to my colleagues, and to the business that I'm working in, because somewhere along the line, they're likely to be valuable to what I do. And I'm not getting any value out of being those aspects in my day-to-day work as it would stand at the moment. So it's a cool tool. It's a bit of fun to do. Read a little bit more about it. It can help you uncover some more strengths about how you work. So this is the kind of last activity for you guys to have a think about. And I'll just give you maybe a minute. I'm sure you've all been thinking about it on the way through. We can see some of the stuff in the chat that you've been thinking about this space here. What I would like you to do just for your own personal record, I won't ask you about these now, but what are your personality strengths? So a couple of things will have come out of the survey you've done there. You should write them down and record them and work out why they're there for you. And you can just sleep on them literally tonight and ponder them the next week or so. Are they taking you to places that you would like to take? Other people taking, or, you know, working with you, leveraging your strengths. I don't want to say exploiting your strengths to get stuff done. What are your EQ strengths? So that for me was that about empathizing with others or understanding others, very high. Good thing. Definitely should do more stuff around that. And I should maybe trust my instinct a bit on that front as well, rather than not. And then the third box, which is also looking for strengths, and that's the Johari window style thing. What would my friends or colleagues say that I'm good at? And I did like Linda's reference back to being, I think it was the rock was solid and reliable. And certainly I've done a couple of things with Linda and she is those things, and they are things that she should be. And I'm sure she's leveraging in her workplace and in her family life as well. So things to write into those boxes. On the other side there, we're looking for kind of opportunities. And for me, that self-control aspect of the EQ is something that I'm quite aware of, which is very helpful, but I need to work on it more. I probably need to have better techniques. I should score higher on that just as a baseline. And so that's something I am consciously aware of and I would like to do. You guys should find something from that space that you could do as well. And then what would my colleagues or friends say that I could work on too? So there might be some other feedback bits there. My people might say I talk too much, or I don't complete tasks thoroughly enough. And some of those things might be very valuable for me to do if I wanted to be better in the workplace that I work for, particularly. And some of the things might be less valuable for me to want to take on board. So the thing about feedback on what other people tell you you should do is that you really should consider that from a perspective of how valuable is that to me. Feedback is all useful to understand it, but you don't have to adopt everyone else's feedback. And again, Brene Brown, a few other people talk about if you're in the arena, that feedback is more valuable. If you're sitting in the stands, then that feedback is interesting, but I maybe choose not to take it on because you don't actually see the world from where I'm seeing things as well. So there you go. Any other commentary on sort of strengths or opportunities for you that you want to add while you're scrolling some stuff in those boxes? Okay, take some notes there for next week. We might ask how that's going when it is. So there you go. That was my bit of spiel for tonight. Thank you very much for getting involved, answering my questions, chatting heavily there. That's really great, which is good. And making that happen. Thank you. And I'm going to go back and put some more thumbs up on some of those while Michelle's having a chat to us. I'm not big on big introductions, but I want to introduce Michelle. Michelle's surprising and excellent value because she continues to move forward in her life. She's a mother, obviously, some kids. She's got a small business, which is Hill and Crofts over at Blaney. And that's a picture of us out the front. I was there that day. She had some year 12 kids in, giving them an insight into, what the world could look like for them. And for year 12 kids, that's just as much as, probably only half of them appreciate it on the day. Nearly all of them will remember that into the future as they go through the different steps and places and go, oh, wow, someone said that to me once before. That's really interesting. Maybe I should have adopted that sooner, whatever. So that was a great day, that one. I was there for that. So thank you very much for getting me involved in that. Michelle's also a board director and she's a first-term councillor. And I'm just going to hand over to you, Michelle, and let you tell us a little bit about your journey and what you'd like to talk about. And go for your life. Thanks for coming along.
So yeah, thanks, Andrew, and thanks for the opportunity. It is certainly, I'm very grateful for the opportunity, and it's caused me to do some self-reflection, as you do in this space. That photo was actually great because for me on that day, it was a real standout. In the year, we had a school group, just as a bit of background, we had a school group that came and saw us. They were year 12 business studies students. We were in the middle of getting organised for a 100-year celebration. So we had already been down a path of 3 or 4 or 5, 6 months of scouring history, working out connections, and really bringing to life just the importance of having a business that's traded under the same name for 100 years. There's very few of them in Australia, and we've been there for 25 years of that 100 years. And it was really, it was actually very humbling, but it was also really motivating. And that school day with those students was great. They were intimately not very engaged, but as Andrew said, you have these iterations in your life when you look back and you go, wow, I remember that, and that's just kind of like lit a fire for me at some point. So I guess that's where I'm going to start my story a little bit. So just as a background, so I was born in Meadow Flat, but lived in rural regional Australia all my life. My dad ended up in the bank, and so we moved a lot. We racked up a lot of schools actually, and we were moving at one stage there nearly every year of our life. So my mum was originally from Sydney, but her task, I think, and this is, I guess, as a role model for me, she used to arrive at a town and she would seek out, we would go to all of the churches to work out which one was going to fit our family best. And then she would go and get involved in some community groups, art galleries, PNF, school canteen, or whatever she needed to do to find our way into a community, knowing full well that we were probably only going to be there for 5 minutes as well. So I think that a lot of my attachment to and depth of involvement in communities really stems back to that, those core values that she passed on to us. She died when I was 14, I should say, and so we were then in sort of very gratefully encased in a community that just took hold of us in Griffith. And then that was my next journey around community and what community does for people. So I guess that kind of is a bit of a backdrop to where I am. And I was going to talk probably a little bit about a business, but more about how I ended up being in council. Andrew, pull me up if I'm talking too long. So the business has been great, and I've lived in Blaney for a long time now, for 25 years, longer than I'd lived anywhere in my life. My children have grown up here. I never expected to see other children grow up all of their life because we'd moved so often. We were in and out, and then all of a sudden you become very, very connected. That was unexpected, and it's been a really nice part of being in Blaney. And the business has been great, and it's a great platform for getting involved with community. We support just about every community group in the town, and through that you get to meet all sorts of characters in that space, and that's really lovely. A few years ago, when my children were young, I was in a car park and there were people complaining about a decision around council. I think it might have been the building of a community centre, and I remember thinking to myself, well, I didn't know a lot about it, so probably not a lot of cause to comment, but I also at that time thought, well, if you don't like it, you should actually put your hand up. It's an opportunity to put your hand up and get involved. So that was about 20 years ago, or probably 15 years ago. And then more recently, and over the last election, and the only reason I'm probably on council today is they deferred the election twice, and I was in a full-time role at both times and thought, this is not my time, I'm too busy, I can't do it. So I found myself where I had the time. I wasn't completely convinced that it was something that I should do, because I knew it was going to be a lot of work, but I totally underestimated that as well. So I had spoken to all the local councillors at the time, and on the day that it was closing, it got to about within an hour of closing, and I realised that if I didn't put my hand up, that there was 7 people nominated and it would go through without an election. So I made the choice to complete my nomination very late in the day, and I know Mel knows my story, so which was so I hadn't done enough work clearly when I did that, but I decided to nominate, and because I thought, well, at the very least, it needs to be a democratic process, and people need to, if we want community to engage, we actually need to have give people the opportunity to vote for somebody. So I did that. So when in the nomination process, there's a little spot in the boxes for anyone who happens to be thinking about nominating where you can actually put a bio. And in my case, no one else had put a bio in that space at all. And I just found that complacent and arrogant. And I was shocked. And so again, in my headspace, I went, well, if it's the last thing I do, at least I'll bring these things to light. And that's what I did. The 2 calls I got the next morning. So everyone, my fellow councillors were in bed, had gone to bed thinking that they were going to breeze through without an election. And so the first 2 calls I got the next morning were from two existing councillors telling me that I just cost the council $80,000. Just to give you an idea about how that started. And fortunately for me, I did go through the election process, and I was councillor-elect the next morning. So I didn't have to worry about whether I had a right to be there or not. And so that was a really defining moment for me. So my journey through council has been interesting, to say the least. And I'm hoping, and I'm very much in the community at the moment, trying to push others to have the courage to stand up and put their hands up, because it's really important. I'm the only female councillor, and Blaney, the only female councillor in the last 10 years. And right at the moment, I don't have another person wanting to step into that space. But for the council to move forward and change and become a place where, where it is family friendly, it is people friendly, and it does actually accommodate all sorts of backgrounds and diversity, then we need to get more of those people onto the council. But also the council needs to change internally first, to actually make it something that looks palatable for people who want to make a difference in the community. So that's kind of I guess my little story about where I am. But in terms of the council, I've had my 3 learnings has been that it's been much more challenging than I expected, and it has not always been a female-friendly place to work. I've learned more than I anticipated, and as a lifelong learner, that's been an amazing gift. It's tested me in ways that I haven't imagined, and my emotional regulation has definitely been challenged in that space. But I've also had this amazing new access to a group of professionals, fellow councillors, board opportunities, and all those other things. So as living in a very small rural community, it's given me loads of opportunities. So that's about me in a nutshell. So Andrew, have you got any questions for me? Or does anyone else have any questions for me?
Apart from not answering the phone that morning, what else would you have done differently?
I know, right? I thought they were ringing to congratulate me, so that was a bad result in the first place. What else wouldn't I have done?
Well, what would you have done differently?
Well, yeah, listen, the list would be long, and I've been trying to actually write some things down more recently, because you lose them very quickly. I think I would I would have known more when I went into this place. I had, as you know, I pulled in the very last minute of the nomination process, and there are things you can do, and certainly Mel is doing some training, core training. I've done all of that this time as we move into the next election period. I probably have 99% decided I will stand again, purely because I've thanks Mel, purely because I need to maintain the diversity that's there, hopefully, if I get re-elected. But I hope to really make it for other people, look at it and go, oh, okay, well, if Michelle's doing it, I can do it too. I've spent 2.5 years gaining an enormous amount of knowledge, working incredibly hard. And so I feel like I'm just coming into my own in terms of being able to contribute appropriately. And yes, those lessons learned in term 1, which was fortunately only 2.5 years instead of 4. Maybe that's the gift. But I will hopefully be able to contribute more. I've done some very strong learning. So I did recently completed my ARCD director's course, and I've also done the LG executive certificate, and those 2 things have really given me a lot more focus and strength to know how I can contribute more fully. So, and that's for me really important, because I am up against it. When I often open my mouth, I get crickets. I either get no response. A lot of emails do not get responded to. So you just have to keep pushing forward. A more recent example of just how that works, and it's quite a simple example, but we had a situation on it was one of the first things as a motion that we agreed to at the beginning of my term, very new. It was a cemetery tour, and that's been kicked down the road for the last 2.5 years. And in November, the executive sort of said, let's get rid of it off our list of things to do. We'll just push it through to the next council. And I sort of said, well, no, we can't. We said that's what we're going to do. We actually need to do it. So it was on principle for me rather than the actual task. For 4 months, I've fought. I've been quite ostracized because I keep pushing back, and we eventually did that tour on Friday, which was lovely. It was actually a great tour. We got to see some amazing. Some of our cemeteries are amazing in our villages. And the GM said to me at the end of the day, he said, I'm really glad you pushed me to do that. And I went, wow, literally, I am grateful. I suppose I am grateful that he then saw the benefit of it. But for me personally, and certainly none of my male compatriots would have had to push back that I had in that space. Simple thing, but at least it's one thing that I actually have done in this term.
Well done.
Congratulations.
Thank
That's a good
you.
thing as well.
Yeah,
What sort
so
of-
inspiring, so inspiring. Like it just,
Thanks.
it's great. And I just think for somebody who's like, I've just kind of thought about it a little bit, but to actually hear you talk, it's like, gosh, it makes me want to get in there and just do it. But I have no clue, like absolutely no clue. So it would be a massive learning curve.
So can I just jump in
It
there?
is
Sorry.
Yeah, no, jump in, Mel.
Linda, I put a link in the chat. You'll have to scroll way right at the top. Yeah. There's Women for Election is running. So this is free. And I'm not providing. So I don't have to declare an interest. I'm actually providing this particular training that I'm about to tell you about. Tomorrow night. So over 2 evenings. One will be tomorrow night. One will be 2 weeks from tomorrow night. It's run over about 2.5 hours both nights, and it's training all about, what do you need to do to become a candidate? What do you need, where do you need to go for information, all that sort of stuff. And it's free because it's all funded by the federal government. I would highly, highly, highly recommend it. It's what really, I did it back in 2019 when I was thinking about running for Orange Council, and it's what really got me all fired up and really thinking that I'm not going to hate on the men, because there are a lot of amazing male leaders in local government. But I thought if the mediocre white men on my council at the time could do it, I sure as hell could do it. So so it's just I would really, really recommend that. And even if at the end of it you decide maybe not this time around, it'll just give you those skills and that knowledge to make that decision, rather than going, I don't know it, I won't do it. So
just a bit more of an understanding. I
would highly recommend it. I do also wish that there was, because I've got a lot of friends and contacts in the queer community, and male, female, transgender, and non-binary, and it's there's a gap there for those particular people wanting, because obviously we need diversity of all types, not just gender diversity. There is a gap in the marketplace for that kind of training at the moment, but and we'll get something soon. But yeah, definitely jump on that if you have the time. Otherwise, there will be in-person ones and probably another online one at some point.
Yeah, I'll definitely have a look at that.
Yeah, check it
So
out.
one
I
of
think
the
that's-
things that I've found just in my little short term around that is that I went in with nothing and clearly not enough knowledge. But over the couple of years, there is an enormous amount of support out there. So there's local government New South Wales. So when you get in, there's women across all the councils, especially the rural councils, but there is an extraordinary amount of support there. You just need to seek it out. LG New South Wales has the mentor program. Local Learning does a whole lot of training. There's mandatory training you have to do as well. So there is a huge way to learn, but there is a lot to learn, but you're certainly not alone. And if you're a lifelong learner like I am, that's been the heart and soul, I guess, for me, is just this constant uphill battle of learning, which I love. So.
Yes, I do love learning. I really do. So yeah, I think it would be that part of it excites me. It does. But anyway, we'll see.
Yeah.
Excellent. I've got a question for you too, Michelle. What parts of
Cool.
things you've learnt at council are you taking back to Hill and Cross and other parts of your community? So what sort of, leadership tips are you taking away from your learnings, I suppose, into the other parts of the world?
Yes, definitely. I think what I take back with me is I guess being more considered, probably more considerate of we get a lot of people come into our shop all the time and tell me about their issues with council or what they need to see, and I might not have ever considered them in that light or those struggles that they might have. So I think, because on the surface everyone can look like they're doing fine, and you don't realise until they come in with a problem, and council certainly can leverage hardship on people in different ways, whether it's getting a DA across the line or whatever, and realising what other people are dealing with. So I think for me it's that, and I think personally for me it's around managing myself, and hopefully I'm managing myself better with other people in the community and at work and everywhere. So
Go. That's a very cool story. Thank you very much for that. Thank you very much for coming along tonight, Michelle. Everyone get a little virtual clap there, a real one. Yay. Thank you very much for that. That is super cool. It's just fascinating, and it's the reason kind of why we're here too. There's a diversity issue, but then people can just step up, or should step up more, to be more generous, as you said, generous, and I guess more courageous to stand up and do things for people, rather than the amount of energy that goes into shutting people down, changing the rules, putting barriers up. It's just phenomenal. And that is what the new world is less about, is parameters and hierarchies and power structures and those kind of things. So if everybody follows the leadership definition of who we can lift up, who we can take to this new place and all those sort of things, it's going to be, a potentially fantastic outcome for us all, I hope. So hopefully there's 9 people here today. Tomorrow you're on the job, everyone's doing something, and we'll come back and we'll talk about it even next week. So there you go. That's a great place to wrap up. I'm just going to stop that recording there as well, and then we can have any other questions you'd like to have. And otherwise, you can go off and